Will travel through Greece before a mammoth land and sea journey across France and its global territories. Jonathan Savage, Fox News.
Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell increases uncertainty on when the central bank will cut interest rates. He says stubborn inflation makes it necessary to let current interest rates do their job and push inflation down to the Fed's 2% target. That kept a lid on stocks. S&P and the NASDAQ fell a fraction Tuesday, while the Dow gained 64 points. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
The following is a public notice lane closure announcement for the Ukudu pipeline replacement on Route 16 between Reventax and Marine Corps Drive, Route 1. The lane closure will take place starting in January till the end of June 2024 as a 24-hour continuous operation. The project, a 198-megawatt combined cycle power plant. Again, the closure will take place starting in January till the end of June 2024. For more information, please contact 671-649-0001. Thank you for your patience as we move forward for Guam.
Okay, what's instant issue?
You open an account, you receive your new debit card right then as an instant issue.
And if I have to replace my card for whatever reason?
Yep, you order, it's ready. No waiting for the mail. And you can track your usage on your online banking in real time.
Wait, I can see my purchase or ATM activity when they happen?
Yep, instantly.
I like it. Where do I sign up?
Bank Pacific. You know, where those big branches, we place routes instantly.
Member FDIC.
Happy birthday, Guam Chamber of Commerce. The Guam Chamber of Commerce celebrates its 100th anniversary at the Hyatt Regency Guam, May 4th, with a theme inspired by the movie Saturday Night Fever. The Chamber's membership includes many corporations, large and small, entrepreneurs, and non-profit organizations. The Chamber keeps the business community's voice strong and vibrant to help businesses thrive and make Guam a better place for us all. Let's congratulate the Guam Chamber of Commerce and its members on celebrating the 100th anniversary.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Good afternoon. My name is Jose Martinez, and you are listening to a Wednesday edition of Tall Tales here on KUSG The Point. We have Daryl Taggarty, our producer, in the studio. Good afternoon, Daryl.
Good afternoon.
I couldn't get that right. But you know what they say about Wednesdays, Daryl?
Hump day.
It's the day before Thursday. It's very consistent, and I really appreciate that. Wednesday is the most consistent day of the week. It always comes after Tuesday, then followed by Thursday, and then it's always in the present. But right now, we have Jemmy E. Cutney.
The government of Guam needs to do more to stop prison facilities.
Yes, sir. Jemmy E. Cutney is where we have a play on words. It is press the meat. It's really meet the press. And here we have an editorial from the PDN. Gov Guam needs to stop drug deals in prisons. The government of Guam needs to do more to stop prison facilities from becoming a haven for drug users and those running a drug business by making sure they're well-trained and well-paid prison guards and equipping the Department of Corrections with the right tools, among things. There has to be more than that. There has to be more that Gov Guam can do besides having senators that hold hearings every so often, and to get DOC officials to the legislature to talk about the problems. The recent discovery of more than 100 grams of crystal meth or ice is a telltale sign of just how persuasive the ice problem has become. How did such large amounts of ice end up inside the prison? We hope the DOC will be able to shed light on the matter after a thorough investigation. Better yet, another agency besides the DOC should investigate. Considering who's supposed to have the authority over the inmate population or how the facilities are run, some of the answers might be obvious. Were prison guards and staff involved? Were prisoners, families, and associates involved? Just how big of an ICE operation is there inside DOA's walls? I lost my place here. The incident shows, among other things, just how ill-equipped DOC is in dealing with the drug problem. How the prison system, how prison has not deterred people from dealing or using drugs, and just how low of a priority that prison system has become. A lack of funding has always been tossed around as among main reasons why systems like the prison don't work. This, despite billions of federal dollars that Gov Guam has received during and even after the pandemic hit. Yet, pandemic funds have gone to less than critical programs and activities. DOC officials said the department needs some $1.8 million to connect a more effective internet-based surveillance system to cover all the inmate housing units. There's still $200 million in federal American Rescue Plan funding that's unspent. They may already be reserved, but they can always be moved around depending on what the governor thinks is a priority. We also can only hope that the oversight hearings, the roundtable discussions, and all types of meetings that senators have held over the past year would help address the issues of drugs in DOC and improve the overall prison system, addressing the overcrowding, hire more, and train more personnel. Senators have appropriated millions of dollars for less critical activities. There also has to be more frequent operations against drugs or inspections inside DOC walls that involve not only DOC personnel, but other law enforcement agencies, given the shortage of correction officers and for accountability. Again, Gov Guam can do more to prevent DOC facilities from turning into a place of business for drugs instead of a place for rehabilitation. And we go to our judicial think tank.
Hey, Jose.
How you doing?
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the structure of the editorial, so-called.
Right.
This part here sounds like this. The government of Guam needs to do more to stop facilities from becoming a drug user's haven by making sure there's enough well-trained and well-paid prison guards, equipping the Department of Corrections with the right tools, among other things. That's kind of like the basketball coach who at halftime got the team all together. They were down by 10. And he said, "This is what we got to do, you guys. I want you to pay close attention. We've got to score more baskets. And we need to keep the other side from scoring baskets." As though they wouldn't be able to figure that out by themselves. So this is basically a non-editorial. It's a swift and sure grasp for the obvious. It's an appeal to common sense.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how that goes on Tall Tales.
Right. Yeah. There was a basketball TV show, or I guess there was a coach. His name was the Great White Hope. This is the Great White Dope.
Yeah. And there's a really interesting comment in the Daily News from a guy named Matthew P., who is a very frequent commenter on Tall Tales, not on our Facebook, but in other publications. And here's what he said. He said there are no votes from the public for DEPCOR upgrades any more than there are votes to be had for GMH upgrades. These kinds of infrastructure projects don't usually drive the electorate one way or the other. You'll recall I mentioned that more than once on the show.
Yeah.
There's no good politics in building a prison.
True.
That doesn't get you any votes at all. Even the prisoners won't vote for you because they can't. So Matthew goes on to say, since it's a highly polarized state of affairs these days, people typically stay with their affiliations, hence the lack of movement. The American Rescue Plan is to rescue Americans, not foreign nationals and habitual residents residing in DEPCOR. Eddie Jerome Calvo was on the right track with the committee and deportations. Now, I notice you've got deportations on the card for today, and I want to come back and talk about deportation. I want to make sure I do a cameo on deportations tomorrow.
Sure.
So if you can pencil that in. But anyhow, Eddie did the deportations. Even if the feds want the client to serve out their terms, also the drug task force that netted Troy Torres, whether justifiable or not, same kind of collateral damage that devising state immigration laws would wreak on law-abiding citizens and non-citizens, etc. Anyhow, that's enough for Matthew P.
Yeah, that was actually pretty good from Matthew P. that I've seen before. Yeah. Oh wow.
He can be pretty incisive, but you know.
He left out the ad hominem. I think that's what made it great.
Yeah, because ordinarily, if he comes to an intersection and it says no left turn, doesn't matter where he's going, he goes straight ahead. Right.
Very good.
So did I hear you mention you're going on to something judicial next, Jose?
I was going to. No, that's further down on the card, but we haven't got to the card yet. But I know that a well-placed call, probably from a Law and Order notebook, is in order. But we'll make sure to get to it because there is a very interesting case where it's Fisher versus Ike Santos from the Department of Education.
Subtitle: Fisher can't stay in his own fissure.
That's the one. How did he escape?
That was the sore point, Jose.
Yes. That's for sure. That's
I
Fisher.
I imagine by now Fisher's a little tired of being the butt of all these jokes.
It's deep. It's very deep. All right. Yeah, this is this Jemmy Cotney, or this editorial, could have probably have been what they call in the editorial room a filler, because they didn't have anything else to place in that part of the publication.
The news hole.
A news hole.
That's what it's called.
That definitely.
Mm-hmm. So somebody sat down and typed, "The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy red dog," enough times to fill up a page. But then the editor said, "We got to have a little bit more content than that, guys." And they came up with this one.
Put some hope into it. That's for sure.
And the punchline, again, Guam can do more to prevent DOC facilities from turning into a place of business for drugs instead of a place for rehabilitation. Even then, the editorial assumes a fact, not an evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's any rehabilitation going on at DEPCOR.
Right. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, Jose.
Well, with that, we're going to go right straight to the card. We have systemic racism. That is where the truth and reality goes against the narrative, the everybody knows narrative. The most times the truth wins out in the people that know how to recognize it, but the narrative sometimes is louder and can cancel the truth. That's called systemic racism. We'll talk about that just a little bit. Public Law 3634 will go out. We're going to go down south for that one. Maneka versus Israel. This is where Maneka Flores of Pratehi Latekin attempted to correlate the victimhood of the Palestinian people in Gaza and correlate it with the experiences of Chamorro people in modern colonial times. It was a failed attempt. And we have a piece here that I think everyone will be interested in because it is about Guam. Tall Tales versus the pro-life movement. This one is going to be, it's going to be a bit of a departure, but I think everyone will understand why that's on the card. Then we have Congress versus the Defense Secretary Austin, Maine versus the Republic, Fisher versus Ike, and Green Energy versus Reality. So right now, let's go to systemic racism. This is where we know the story of Paul Zerzan, who wrote about the hue that he saw was the true color of rice. When he penned that letter, it generated a response that essentially canceled him from forever having any more of his letters published in the PDN. Systemic racism is brought to us by Just Pirates Cove. For those watching the video feed, you can see our host, Bob Klitzkie, and the pirate himself from Just Pirates Cove, Jeff Pleadwell. Jeff Pleadwell is wearing the Tailgater, I'm a Tailgater t-shirt. Bob Klitzkie is in the orange Just Pirates Cove t-shirt. Just Pirates Cove, a restaurant, a bar with a gift shop. There is a museum there. It is a destination. It is also a stop on the way your travels around the island, located in Ipan, Talafofo. It is open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Make sure you stop by and say hi, and you might even meet the pirate himself. Okay, moving on to Public Law 3634. That's the open government law, the transparency in government law that mandates not only do agencies and nonprofits have to publish their agendas for their monthly meetings or whenever they do meet, they also have to include a detailed agenda as well as a way for people to view and watch the meeting from their own homes, a broadcasted link to the meeting. And they have to have those agendas published in a periodical of, I always get this term wrong. I'm going to get it right here, of general circulation. And that is where newspaper of general circulation, and that is where the newspaper has to publish at least once every 2 weeks a physical copy. And the only newspaper of general circulation on Guam is the Guam Daily Post. So we have here the Inalahan Municipal Planning Council, who put out an announcement today of a meeting next Wednesday, April 24th at 6:30 p.m. There is lots that's going, well, not too much going on. I found it interesting that they do have a public comment section reserved for them on the agenda, and only 3 minutes per public comment. So make it short, people. They got things to do down there in Inarahan rather than listen to your public comment. However, the Inalahan Municipal Planning Council meeting agenda was published in the Guam PDN online only. And it will only appear online because the Pacific Daily News no longer is a newspaper of general circulation. They do not have or have yet to publish a physical copy once every 2 weeks. So it's a short agenda. they might not be discussing much, especially with the 3-minute limit for public comments. However, anything that is discussed at that meeting has a potential to be nullified because it does not follow Public Law 3634. Now, Maneka versus Israel. Told you where Maneka attempted to connect the victimhood of the Palestinians in Gaza to Chamorros here on Guam. And you can have an opinion on what's going on in between the Israel, Palestinian, Gaza, Hamas war. However, the attempt to co-opt another culture or another people's victimhood or whatever they're claiming as if it's your own is not only just, to me, deplorable, it's just wrong on all fronts. In it, she, when she was interviewed during a protest of a potential resolution to support Israel because of Hamas's terroristic attacks that occurred on October 7th, she said that we come from people who have survived a history of war and genocide and has to rebuild after going through the atrocities of war. She said, we are indigenous people. We are a colonized people. We stand in solidarity with Palestine. It's the right thing to do. We are standing on the right side of history. Well, there is a campaign going on to help fund for the visit of a World War II veteran. And this is from a Fox News affiliate in California. Campaign seeks to send World War II veteran to Guam and Iwo Jima for anniversaries of battles he took part in. A fundraising campaign has been launched to help send a World War II veteran from Northern California to visit the site of a battle he took part in during the war. Corporal Frank Wright, who is now 98 years old, spent 4 years in the United States Marine Corps and fought in major battles in Guadalcanal, New Georgia, Guam, and Iwo Jima. He served as a member of the 4th Marine Raiders Special Forces during the war, according to the Stockton Marine Corps Club, organizers of the campaign. Quote, I have been asked why I would like to go back to Guam and relive some of the things I participated in there, Wright said in a video related to the campaign. Some are happy and some are bad, but I still want to go back and see the people that I helped liberate. This upcoming July will mark 80 years since the Battle of Guam, a battle that lasted from July 21st to August 10th, 1944. Wright, an Arkansas native, said some people he helped liberate at the time were 6 months old and were living in concentration camps. July 21st is celebrated as Guam Liberation Day, and Guam remains a strategic U.S. territory, according to the U.S. Department of Defense. The Stockton Marine Corps Club said Wright has been invited as a guest for the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Guam, and the club is trying to raise money for him to attend. Wright is an active member of the club and will be 99 at the time of the celebration in Guam. When we get there in Guam, I will be the Grand Marshal to help celebrate the natives and the children that are going to be there waiting to see what their country went through at that particular time, Wright said. The club is also trying to take Wright to Iwo Jima in March 2025 for the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Iwo Jima, which he also took part in. And I hope that Maneka Flores and those protesters, anti-military protesters from Protegi the Texan get a chance to meet one of these people who part of the colonizers that liberated this island during that war that I think that Maneka was citing, that connects her or the Chamorro people to the victimhood of the Palestinians in Gaza. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG The Point. We're going to go to a break, and we'll be back with more on the card. Don't go away.
Okay, what's instant issue?
You open an account, you receive your new debit card right then as an instant issue.
And if I have to replace my card for whatever reason?
Yep, you order, it's ready. No waiting for the mail. And you can track your usage on your online banking in real time.
Wait, I can see my purchase or ATM activity when they happen?
Yep, instantly.
I like it. Where do I sign up?
Bank Pacific. You know, where those put branches, we place routes instantly.
Member FDIC.
Micronesia Mall proudly presents Mall Ball 3-on-3 Spring Slam, happening April 19 to 21, 2024, right in the center court.
Catch the thrill from the sidelines as the adult men's and women's teams compete on a custom indoor FIBA 3x3 court for $4,000 in cash prizes, trophies, and the ultimate bragging right. Slots are now locked in, and these teams are ready to get their game on starting Friday night. Don't miss out on this exciting event only at the Micronesia Mall. This FIBA-sanctioned spring tournament is brought to you by the Micronesia Mall and Clutch Guam. Follow us on social media for updates. Terms and conditions apply.
And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
And we're back, Tall Tales. My name is Jose Martinez, and I'm going to get to something on the card that I've been itching to get to for probably about a week now. There's been a lot of discussion, and I think this one is this one might turn heads a little bit. This is Tall Tales versus the pro-life movement. And before I begin to read this op-ed, that was written by I want to say centrist, left of center, maybe columnist named David French. I want to read this very short letter to the editor, submitted by our own Bob Klitzkie. I can't remember, probably about a year ago. Abortion, bottom line, up front. Never. They'll flood the media with sophistry, straw man, false dilemma, faulty equivalence, et tu quoque, and appeal to authority. But no matter what logical fallacy, cheap shot, legislative legerdemain, deflection, or mischaracterization the pro-abortion gang employs, it doesn't change the answer to the fundamental question. When is it okay to take the life of a helpless, innocent human? Now, I know that when the topic of abortion or the logical fallacy of abortion rights becomes a topic, it is very polarizing. It's polarizing because it asks, I believe it's polarizing because it asks people to dig deep and answer a question they're probably not prepared to answer, or that is emotionally charged and also politically charged. This one is politically charged, and I am going to say up front that I agree with David French in this one, and then I'm going to give a little bit of my a really deeper take after I read this. It's called The Great Hypocrisy of the Pro-Life Movement. This came out in April last week, April 11th or Friday of last week, and it came out after candidate Donald Trump seemingly gave his position on a federal ban on abortion. To understand the remarkable moral, political, and intellectual collapse of the pro-life movement, look to the Alabama Supreme Court. Not just to Donald Trump's recent pledge not to sign a national abortion ban or Carrie Lake's flip-flop on Arizona's reinstated 1864 anti-abortion law. When the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that IVF embryos were subject to the state's wrongful death statute, it forced the pro-life movement to fully examine the cultural and political implications of its position on unborn children, and pro-life Republicans blinked. They caved almost instantly on a core philosophical element of the movement, the incalculable value of every human life, no matter how small. And the movement is now standing by or even applauding as Trump is turning the Republican Party into a pro-choice party, one more moderate than the Democrats, but pro-choice still. The traditional pro-life argument comes from different religious and secular sources, but they all rest on a common belief. From the moment of conception, an unborn child is a separate human life. Yes, the baby is completely dependent on the mother, but it is still a separate human life. The baby's life isn't more important than the mother's, which is why the best drafted pro-life or anti-abortion laws protect the life and physical health of the mother, but it possesses incalculable worth nonetheless. Absent extreme circumstances, the unborn child must not be intentionally killed. And while pro-life Americans can disagree about how to protect unborn children, whether it's primarily through legal restrictions, primarily through measures meant to reduce the demand for abortion, or primarily through a combination of abortion restrictions or financial assistance to mothers and families, there has long been agreement on that one core claim. From the moment of conception, an unborn child is a person worth protecting. From that standpoint, the Alabama Supreme Court's decision in February holding that the state's wrongful death statute applied to embryos frozen and preserved as part of the in vitro fertilization process should not have been surprising at all. If state law can declare an unborn child to be a separate human life, then of course that would apply to all unborn children, including those conceived as part of fertility treatments. Even though the embryos are frozen and exist outside the womb, they are still human, and no less human than those created through conventional means. But I have many pro-choice friends who would read the paragraphs above and scoff. They have good faith disagreements about when an embryo or fetus becomes a person entitled to legal protection, and they disagree about the intentions of the pro-life movement. They argue that the pro-life movement is about power and control. It's about seeking to constrain the choices women can make, to keep women in the home and to maintain male dominance. The rhetoric about the value of all life and the rhetoric of self-sacrifice is a ruse. At the end of the day, the pro-life argument is a weapon to be wielded against people Republicans don't like. While I always respected arguments about the personhood of the baby, I was often frustrated when critics would attribute malign motives to pro-life Americans. I'd been a part of the pro-life movement my entire adult life. I began my activism in college and represented pro-life students and pro-life groups in my legal career, and I'd never seen a desire for subjugation and control. While I don't pretend that any political movement is perfect, I've seen with my own eyes pro-life activists and volunteers demonstrate immense love and compassion for women in distress, trying desperately to care for both mother and child by offering financial, emotional, and spiritual support. But now, I'm left wondering how much of the movement was truly real. How much was it really about protecting all human life? And were millions of obstinately pro-life Americans happy with pro-life laws, only so long as they targeted them and imposed no burden at all on us? Well, let's review the events since the Alabama court's decision. First, Alabama Republicans panicked. The Republican-dominated legislature raced to pass a law that granted IVF clinics sweeping immunity from the state's wrongful death statute. Alabama also has one of the strictest anti-abortion laws in the country. As my newsroom colleague Emily Cochran politely put it, the vote demonstrated the intense urgency among Republicans to protect IVF treatments, even if that meant sidestepping the thorny contradictions between their pledge to protect unborn life and fertility treatment practices. At the conclusion of IVF treatments, Unused embryos are often discarded and destroyed. I'm going to editorialize here. Unused, unimplanted human beings are often discarded and destroyed. I'm grateful for IVF. I have very close friends who conceive their children that way, but the law should not treat IVF embryos substantially differently and worse than embryos conceived through natural means. But that's exactly what the Alabama legislature chose to do. On Wednesday, Trump reversed his previous position supporting a 20-week ban on abortion. He announced that he would not support a national abortion ban if he wins the presidency, and he said the policy should instead be left up to the states. This is a traditional pro-life position, but only if you urge states to use their autonomy to pass pro-life bills. Instead, Trump's advice to voters was, follow your heart and do what's right for your family and do what's right for yourself. It's all about the will of the people, he said. This is the most pro-choice position a Republican presidential candidate has taken since at least Gerald Ford. And how did the pro-life establishment respond? With mild criticism, but also with immediate support. As Politico reported this week, Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America, Students for Life, the Faith and Freedom Coalition, the Family Research Council, National Right to Life, and Catholic Vote reiterated their commitment Monday morning to electing Trump. Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, one of the largest right-wing student and faith outreach organizations in the country, immediately posted his support, calling the statement masterful, and said that the pro-life leaders he talked to were very happy. On Tuesday, the Arizona Supreme Court upheld a statute from 1864 prohibiting virtually all abortions in the state. The Arizona Republican Carrie Lake, who is running for her party's nomination for Senate, immediately disagreed with the ruling, a reversal of her previous position, supporting the state abortion ban. She also posted a statement promising that she would not support a federal abortion ban if elected senator. Instead, she promised to protect IVF and propose a laundry list of policies intended to ease the financial burden of child care, including baby bonuses, paid family leave, and extending the child tax credit. So, where is the Republican pro-life consensus today? Philosophically, the moment is breaking. There is no coherent pro-life argument for why a state should prevent women who become pregnant through natural means from destroying an embryo while protecting the ability of families who create an embryo through IVF to either destroy or keep it frozen indefinitely. At the same time, poorly drafted abortion regulations have placed a terrible spotlight on conservative states, with many examples of punitive laws placing women who are suffering miscarriages and other pregnancy complications in profound danger. This harsh approach undermines pro-life arguments that the movement does, in fact, love both mother and child. It's no wonder, then, that the pro-life cause is in a state of emergency soon after its greatest legal triumph in Dobbs versus Jackson. It has lost every referendum since the Supreme Court decided Dobbs, including ballot measures in red states like Kentucky, Kansas, Montana, and Ohio. Early polling indicates that Florida's proposed pro-choice referendum may well cross the 60% threshold needed to pass and overturn the state's 6-week abortion ban. In fact, a majority of Republican voters appear to support the referendum. Even more ominously from a pro-life perspective, the abortion rate rose under Trump, and the total number of abortions has actually increased since the Dobbs decision. I did look at 2 of the articles that were cited on this, and this is me speaking separate from the article. And it is true, but there are some context that was appropriated to the reason why those abortion rates rose. It's not specifically because of a pro-life movement or because of Donald Trump. And these articles that attributed different context to the reason why the abortion rate rose includes Miss Magazine. The Gutenmeyer, I think that's how you pronounce it, Institute, a pro Choice Pro-Abortion Institute is the other one who actually does really good stats or keeping of stats on abortion. Back to this column. I still believe there are many deeply sincere pro-life Americans. I see their anger in response to Trump's statement, even when they've previously supported him. There are people who genuinely believe that all human life is precious and should be protected from conception until natural death. But I also recognize that many of the critics of the pro-life movement were right all along. When push came to shove, the pro-life position was either secondary to other values or it genuinely was punitively tribal, enthusiastically aimed straight at the supposedly licentious left, but ready to be abandoned the instant the commitment to unborn children might endanger the larger political project. Abortion is the poison pill that Trump doesn't want to swallow. At its worst, the pro-life movement was also deeply cynical. Many of its members have spent the last 8 years mocking and bullying pro-life conservatives who refused to support Trump, even when we rightly said he was a terrible ambassador for a virtuous cause. I've been called a baby killer or murderer or heretic more times than I can count. Commitment to Trump was the ultimate test of your pro-life convictions. Yet, now he has taken the most pro-choice position of any Republican presidential nominee in 2 generations, and all the largest pro-life groups continue to bend the knee. Even so, it's not just about Trump. The Alabama court taught us that. It presented the pro-life movement with a decision squarely rooted in its own logic, and much of the Republican Party said no. And it said no as loudly and emphatically as it could. Is it any wonder that Trump followed suit? The older I get, the more I'm convinced that we simply don't know who we are or what we truly believe until our values carry a cost. For more than 40 years, the Republican Party had made the case that life begins at conception. Alabama's Supreme Court agreed, yet the Republican Party can't live with its own philosophy. There is no truly pro-life party in the United States. I read that not wanting to believe what I was reading or agree with it. And I couldn't stop agreeing with it. And I'll tell you why after we come back from this break. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG. The Point. We'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Ray Gibson. I want you to join me Saturday, April 27th at Zone Nightclub in Tumon as we turn back the clock to the raddest decades ever. It's the 80s and 90s choice throwback.
Let's do it.
Get ready to groove to some of the slamming beats with the most incredible lighting and sound system you've ever experienced.
This is how we do it.
And if that's not enough, how's this sound? We're giving away $1,500 with the ultimate cold hard cash drop that we'll do throughout the evening with other cool prizes. And of course, my buddy DJ Daryl Lizama is going to be throwing down on the ones and twos. What does that mean again, huh? Doors open at 9 on April 27th at Club Zoe with a $20 cover charge at the door. For advance tickets, WhatsApp Daryl Lizama at 671-787-0743.
The 80s and 90s throwback brought to you by these cool sponsors.
76 Circle K,
The local grindhouse in Barragata,
Budweiser,
Vic Gaza for Senator, and by the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
What?
Located in the heart of Hagåtña, Mezcla Fusion Bistro isn't just a meal, it's an experience. Fresh, local ingredients are fused with international influence. Here at Mezcla Fusion Bistro, Chamorro staples meet modern fusion. Make your reservation today and taste the magic. Visit us online at mezclaguam.com or call 479-2652 or 489-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
All right. Thank you for coming back. My name is Jose Martinez, and I just got finished reading a scathing criticism of the political pro-life movement in the United States, and the hypocrisy it shouted to the world in light of the Alabama Supreme Court ruling that IVF embryos created during the IVF process are persons. And in the wake of that, the politicians who are scrambling to protect IVF were the Republicans or the pro-life Republicans, a lot of Christian entities. And I want to say not the Catholic entities, but here I'm reading that the National Right to Life, which is a Catholic institution, and Catholic Vote, which definitely is a Catholic institution, are committed to Trump's statement. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't support Trump at all in this, but there ought to be some clarifications on what anti-abortion means and who we're protecting. For the Alabama legislature, the Republicans and the pro-life, supposed pro-life Republicans in the Alabama legislature, to go and protect IVF as if it's not a part of the abortion movement, I'm beside myself. I am a proponent of life in the sense that I am anti-abortion. And I don't pick and choose, and I don't make apologize for being very stringent on that. And I'm just dumbfounded that it became a political issue instead of one that is based purely on human rights. Imagine World War II if it was discovered what was happening in the concentration camps became a political issue. You know, we don't know much about what's going on, but, you know, these are prisoners of war, and Germany has a right to do what they need to do with some prisoners of war. And I might not get elected or reelected if I don't support the right thing. Or even with slavery, when we talked about a group of people who were not considered humans or persons, became a political issue in the sense that we held off. We had a chance to save the slaves, but we took a poll, and it showed us that we weren't leading in our anti-slavery rhetoric or issue. And that's exactly what happened here just this month with who we thought were pro-life advocates or anti-abortion advocates scrambling to protect IVF. IVF destroys human persons. I don't know where I'm going to go from here in the sense of my advocacy. I might go the route that I usually did a couple of years ago when I found an organization that didn't legislate, didn't use lobbyists, didn't have a letter writing campaign to change laws or to support candidates. They just sat and prayed, and that's all they do. And I'll talk about that another time because that's not what this is about. But man, talk about sorely disappointed and just dumbfounded with what's going on with the supposed anti-abortion pro-life movement. Right now I have Tim Rohr online, and I'm very interested to hear your take on this. I was struggling with whether or not I should talk about this. I really still can't help but agree with this op-ed. What say you, Tim? And good afternoon. Welcome to Tall Tales.
Yeah, good afternoon. Hey, so I'm glad you brought it up. I read about it, of course, a while ago when it first came out, and there's several things that this actually is highlighting. Number one, of course, the Alabama Supreme Court is absolutely right on. Life begins at conception, and it begins at conception.
Right.
I also back Trump, who said that first of all, he's not going to do a federal abortion ban. I think we talked about that last time, where the whole thing was to give it back to the states. So the federal government needs to stay out of it. And then as far as the IVF thing, I completely understand it because really it's only the Catholic Church that treats IVF and artificial insemination as mortal sins.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay with Protestant churches and Protestant people and whatever. However, most Catholics don't even know that. I know a lot of Catholics who, engage in IVF and whatever because they think oh, well, God wants me to have a child, So, but it is Catholic Church teaching. It is grave. It's a grave sin.
It is.
It's God who determines how you're going to have a baby, and the whole thing of the unitive and the procreative is exactly what that's all about. So we don't get to artificially do anything. Mm-hmm. But because our church is so quiet on these kinds of things.
You thought you would have heard more about it from the church after the Supreme Court made their ruling, and then the legislature decided, the Alabama legislature decided to one-up the Supreme Court.
Well, of course, but we don't expect to hear really anything from the church.
Well, guess who's in Alabama, right? Guess who's headquartered and based in Alabama? Well, I don't like saying those questions, but there is a huge.
No, but you're right. Except for that, ever since Mother Angelica died, I don't even pay attention.
Right, I'm referencing EWTN, the largest Catholic network in the United States right now.
Yeah. No, they're not worth listening to as far as I'm concerned. They've gone. I don't know. They're not. Mother Angelica.
I hear you.
EWTN, ever since
she was the anchor.
Nobody speaks up, But the bottom line, really is it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. That's what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
And so there's natural law. But beyond that, the real thing is, Roe v. Wade had its origins in Planned Parenthood versus Griswold versus Planned Parenthood in Connecticut. So I think 4 years earlier, in 1968, and that was about
contraception, right?
Contraception, right? And that's where the original right to privacy, those words came out. And before, actually, it was criminal to just. This little thing brought out it was criminal to distribute contraception to married couples. And it didn't say if you're not married, go ahead and use it. But if you're married, it was illegal, right? Well, that's interesting because it actually puts light on the fact that the state protects marriage for what reason? To create new taxpayers. Basically, that's what marriage is, a protected institution. So, but because we don't want to address the whole issue, because contraception, abortion is just extreme birth control, right? It's just sort of birth control of last resort. But the idea that I can control who and when I'm going to conceive and not conceive is playing God. It's part of the same, abortion mindset. I know people will hate me for that, but that's what the Catholic Church teaches that, especially for married couples, to contracept is intrinsic catechism. So it's a grave mortal sin. But we start fooling around with those kinds of things, and then we've gotten into this whole IVF thing. But I can't blame Protestants, like people like Trump, who may not be in any religion, for not understanding or not going along with it or not wanting to go down there in the weeds when the Catholic Church has been, at least in America, has been silent and remains silent about the whole thing. And this is an obviously great opportunity for them to actually, why IVF and artificial insemination is wrong. But we don't hear about it. So I'm not going to make it political. They want us to make it political.
Yeah.
They're looking for any way to keep Trump down. And I'm willing to accept Trump as one of those godless leaders that Israel had, that God used to do the right thing anyway.
Yeah.
Or even a God-fearing leader like a David, right? A King David who committed adultery and then murdered the husband of the person he committed adultery with. So God can bring good out of anything, and so I'm not expecting Trump to be a pillar of virtue and all that kind of thing. So we just have to wake up and understand that these guys are trying to manipulate everything that they can to make Trump a bad guy. But that's why this is a mess. We made it a mess when.
Well, I think there's going to be a part two that I'm going to have on this subject matter as well, because, like I said, there's a lot of thought I put into this. Tim, unfortunately, we're coming up to the top of the hour, and I really want to thank you for calling in.
Worries.
And I am going to get to your part two also pretty soon, because there's some interesting stuff in there also that pertains to our island. So thank you for that, and have a great day, Tim.
Great, you too.
You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG. We're going to the big halftime show. the Tall Tales Tailgater Rogues Gallery, and the rest of the car. Don't go away. Tall Tales on KUSG. We'll be right back.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
7 jurors seated. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The Trump criminal hush money trial needs 5 more jurors and 6 alternates before opening arguments can begin in New York City.
A contentious moment between former President Trump and Judge Juan Merchan. President Trump was seen speaking towards and gesturing at one of the prospective jurors. When the judge told Trump's lawyers to speak to him, the judge said, quote, "I won't tolerate that." The gag order, that's another big issue with the DA's office, asking the court to hold Trump in criminal contempt because of social media posts that he made about witnesses in the case, namely his former lawyer Michael Cohen and adult film actress Stormy Daniels. A hearing will happen on Tuesday.
Fox's Nate Foy. Former U.S. Senator Bob Graham of Florida died yesterday at 87. The Democrat chaired the Intelligence Committee following the 9/11 terrorist attacks and opposed the Iraq invasion. He also served 2 terms as Florida governor. The Supreme Court hears arguments over a law used to prosecute January 6th rioters.
Justices questioned attorneys over the intent of a law passed after corporate scandals that makes obstructing an official proceeding a federal crime. Justice Neil Gorsuch.
Would a heckler in today's audience qualify, or at the State of the Union address? Would pulling a fire alarm before a vote qualify?
The government's attorney acknowledged the novel use, but argues the circumstances surrounding the riot cases haven't occurred before. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
The Justice Department says a former financial counselor with the U.S. Army pleaded guilty to defrauding grieving Gold Star families out of millions of dollars worth of life insurance payments. Kaz Craffey of New Jersey could get up to 10 years in prison. America's listening to Fox News.
We're going to dance and have some fun.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Ray Gibson. I want you to join me Saturday, April 27th at Zone Nightclub in Tumon as we turn back the clock to the raddest decades ever. It's the 80s and 90s choice throwback.
Let's do it.
Get ready to groove to some of the slamming beats with the most incredible lighting and sound system you've ever experienced.
This is how we do it.
And if that's not enough, how's this sound? We're giving away $1,500 with the ultimate cold hard cash drop that we'll do throughout the evening with other cool prizes. And of course, my buddy DJ Daryl Lizama is going to be throwing down on the ones and twos. What does that mean again, huh? Doors open at 9 on April 27th at Club Zoe with a $20 cover charge at the door. For advance tickets, WhatsApp Daryl Lizama at 671-787-0743.
The 80s and 90s throwback brought to you by these cool sponsors.
76 Circle K.
The local grindhouse in Barragata.
Budweiser.
Vic Gaza for Senator, and by the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
What?
The House walked articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas over to the Senate yesterday, where Democrats are expected to quash them.
The House says Mayorkas broke the law and violated the public trust. Senate Republicans vow to stop all Senate action unless the Senate completes the trial. It's about the math. It only takes 51 votes to dismiss.
Fox's Chad Pergram. Israel's war cabinet is weighing how it will respond to Iran's weekend attack.
The Israeli military confirms there will be a response to Iran's weekend missile and drone attack, saying it'll be done in a way and at a time Israel chooses. The scope of Israel's retaliation is unclear as the country's war cabinet debates its response. But one of Israel and Iran's closest neighbors in the Middle East is urging calm. Jordan's foreign minister says the country won't let anyone put their citizens in danger and will confront anyone who does. Iran, which has characterized the attack on Israel as retaliation for a deadly strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, is warning Israel against risking a wider conflict.
Fox's Jeff Paul. The White House announced yesterday it will levy sanctions against Iran for the attack. A judge sentences a Chicago woman to 50 years in prison without parole for killing a pregnant teen and cutting her baby from her womb.
Clarissa Figueroa lured 9-month pregnant Maylin Ochoa Lopez to her home by promising her free baby clothes. Prosecutors say that Figueroa came up with the plot after her adult son died of natural causes and she began a desperate search for a newborn. Figueroa pleaded guilty to first-degree murder after her daughter admitted to assisting her and agreed to testify against her mom. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Off a day, Mark Beneventi from Security Title here with a little information about deeds. In the world of real estate, a deed is the most common way to transfer property and ownership. Whether you're transferring a house in Jigo, a hotel in Tumon, or a ranch in Talipopo, the deed will describe the property boundaries, any restrictions, and the exact name of the new owner. Whether you're selling, buying, or even inheriting property, the deed transferring title is essential. When it comes to real estate, knowledge is key. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Hi, this is Jerry Roberts. What's happening in the workplace? What about your job and career? What ideas will find their way into your world? That's what you get with the Extra Point every day on The Ray Gibson Show here on 93.3 FM. Sometimes it's about what's in the news, or working relationships, or how to get further and do better. I try to make it interesting, inspiring, and hopefully sneak a little fun in too. Be a part of it. 7:25 weekday mornings. The Extra Point. Brought to you by First Hawaiian Bank.
Micronesia Mall proudly presents Mall Ball 3-on-3 Spring Slam. Happening April 19 to 21, 2024, right in the center court.
Catch the thrill from the sidelines as the adult men's and women's teams compete on a custom indoor FIBA 3x3 court for $4,000 in cash prizes, trophies, and the ultimate bragging right. Slots are now locked in, and these teams are ready to get their game on starting Friday night. Don't miss out on this exciting event only at the Micronesia Mall. This FIBA-sanctioned spring tournament is brought to you by the Micronesia Mall and Clutch Guam. Follow us on social media for updates. Terms and conditions apply.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla Bistro. Located in Agotnya, you can call 671-479-2652 or 671-489-2653 for reservations. big halftime show, The Tall Tales, I'm a Tailgater Rogues Gallery. That marks the beginning of the second hour of this Wednesday edition of Tall Tales. In the last hour, I wrapped up a column by writer David French titled The Great Hypocrisy of the Pro-Life Movement. It was a scathing criticism of the accounting of the events that occurred just in the past couple of months, starting from February, and the Alabama Supreme Court decision to declare that frozen embryos could be held as a part of the state's wrongful death statute, or they applied to the wrongful death statute. And my thoughts, just real quick, and I want to thank Tim Moore for calling in. You know, this is what I really wanted to do is not to do a criticism on Donald Trump, because I don't look to him as a beacon of the anti-abortion advocacy. I believe he's just listening to a constituent he decided he made a choice to listen to and run with, and they kind of dictated what he said last week in his video statement on Truth Social. However, what I really want to emphasize is the fact that the movement ought not be politicized the way it is right now. And if you really truly want to understand the pro-life or the anti-abortion movement, I really encourage you to dig deep and ask yourself first, why are you, or why do you consider yourself pro-life or anti-abortionist? And how is it that you support that? And it doesn't necessarily mean supporting the right candidate, because that's not what the movement or the advocacy is for. I mean, I look at countries like France. France just passed a law, not passed a law, they immortalized abortion, decriminalizing it in their constitution or their equivalent of a constitution, making abortion very legal, and you can't be charged for it. However, they also made it available only up to 14 weeks. After that, they recognize, that a fetus and an embryo, a baby in the womb, is a person, or at least a life worth protecting. And a national federal ban wouldn't have to be completely banning abortion, even though that's what I would desire. But I think more so the movement or the mentality is going to have to be won through prayer and understanding and conversion of people's minds and understandings of what the action of abortion really does. Bob Klitzkie had it right. Never. When is it ever right to take the life of an innocent, helpless human being? And it's never. He didn't say, when is it the right to take the life of a innocent, helpless, unborn? He said human being, and the unborn are human beings. It's not a debate with science. It has nothing to do with religious takes. It's just a plain fact that a fertilized egg, after it develops and splits, after it's fertilized with a human sperm, a human egg, human sperm, creates a human baby, a life, where all of us began. All of us began in the womb, not outside the womb. And so when you think about that, and you're thinking about being an advocate, hemming and hawing about and politicizing the issue is disingenuous. But that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say today. There's going to be more I want to expand on as far as where to go from here. And hopefully that I can help convert some minds also. There's people who are strongly dead set into the advocacy of abortion that I don't even think they understand the elements involved or what's going on. Because to me, if anybody understands that a life is taken, and most times violently, I don't see how there's an advocacy for it. Moving on to the card. Excuse me. I have Congress versus Defense Secretary Austin or Biden's foreign policy in the Indo-Pacific. This one came out in the Washington Times back last week, probably Friday for us, because it's dated April 11th. Pentagon 2 weeks away from decision on China-focused joint military task force sought by Congress. This originally showed up in a newsletter a couple of days before it was published in the Washington Times. The Pentagon is close to completing an assessment into setting up a congressionally mandated joint military force for the Pacific that lawmakers say is needed to prepare for a war with China. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told Congress this week. The Washington Times disclosed in December that Congress was battling the Pentagon over a legal requirement to create the multi-service and multinational task force. During a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing Tuesday, Mr. Austin was asked about the controversy and disclosed that a study is underway regarding its creation. Command and control is really important to me, important to all of us. And so what I've asked my team to do is look at this and do an assessment to make sure that we get it right and we understand the operational and cost issues associated with this, said Mr. Austin in response to questions from Senator Roger Wicker, the committee's ranking member. Mr. Wicker, a Mississippi Republican, said Admiral John Echolino, the outgoing commander of the Indo-Pacific Command, convinced Congress that a separate standing joint task force for future military operations is needed. Asked when the assessment of the task force will be completed, Mr. Austin said the review will be done in a couple of weeks. The Defense Secretary declared to say when the Indo-Pacific Command would begin forming the joint task force. Really depends on what their assessment is, Mr. Austin said. Mr. Wicker said in a statement on the visit by Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida that the joint task force is needed for strengthening military command and control within the U.S.-Japan alliance. In order to achieve that benefit, the United States needs to establish a fully operational joint task force headquarters as mandated by fiscal 2023 NDA Act, along with the subordinate joint task forces, Mr. Wicker said, noting he plans to hold the Pentagon accountable for implementing the law. Members of Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, added language to the fiscal 2023 National Defense Authorization Act that requires creating a joint task force headquarters for operations. FY 2024 Defense Act restricts funding for travel by the Pentagon until officials submit an implementation plan required on the earlier mandate for the Joint Force Headquarters. An Indo-Pacific Command spokesman said in December that a smaller joint task force that was due to be completed is being set up called Joint Task Force Micronesia on Guam, and it will meet the legal requirement contained in the NDAA. Earlier this month, the Navy appointed Rear Admiral Greg Huffman to head Joint Task Force Micronesia. The task force will focus on supporting operations around Guam, the Northern Marianas, and the Federated States of Micronesia and Palau, according to the Navy. The Joint Task Force is not focused on China. Instead, the force is devoted to homeland defenses on Guam and security support to the other island states. Critics in Congress said the Guam Task Force is a needed step for better military coordination. However, the two-star command falls short of the war-fighting entity needed for better command and control of military forces, headed by a four-star officer who can be ready for potential conflict with China. Congress continues to press for the task force. They've been dragging their feet on this for years, said a congressional source close to the debate, who said the issue is not congressional micromanagement, but the military opposes, but needed oversight. The legislation calls on Indo-Pacific Command to create a joint force headquarters as an operational command by October. The law also requires the Pentagon to report to Congress on its plans for setting up the task force headquarters. It says here by June 2023. We're in 2024 already. That deadline was missed, congressional aides said. Joint task forces are special military units that combine force from the Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force into a separate unit. In some cases, task forces include officers from foreign military services. The controversy was disclosed in May 2023 in a report by the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party that called for the Pentagon to fully implement the task force mandate in a report. The task force is needed to deter China, the report said. In a crisis, critical time could be lost adjudicating which organization or senior leader is in charge of the day-to-day conduct of various coalition operations, the committee report said. This type of planning should be done in peacetime, ideally with the inclusion of personnel from key allies like Japan and Australia. The Biden administration is opposing the task force as undermining its policy, stated by senior administration officials, including Mr. Austin, that war with China is neither imminent nor inevitable. That's interesting. Representative Michael Gallagher, chairman of the House Select Committee on the CCP, said in December that the Pentagon's failure to meet the legal requirement is their concern. We need a permanent joint task force or joint force headquarters that is responsible for the operational employment of forces in the Western Pacific. He said it needs to be at the 4-star level and it needs to include military staff from key allies like Australia and Japan. Mr. Wicker has said the failure to create the task force in a timely manner is bewildering since Chinese President Xi Jinping recently stated that China will take over Taiwan's island democracy. Deputy Secretary Kathleen Hicks, prior to joining the government, co-authored a report that called for setting up a joint military task force in Asia. The Pacific Fleet, under the Indo-Pacific Command, set up Joint Task Force 519, which operated from 1999 until it was disbanded in 2015. Very interesting. I know we have talked about and heard about the task force Micronesia that was just created, not just created, but announced, I think at the beginning of this month. But we don't hear too much about one that's specifically focused on China and what's going on as far as if anything were to happen. I myself am kind of on the fence on if there is such a task force, is that an indication of an escalation, or would that escalate things here in the Pacific? I mean, we are smack dab in the middle of it, task force or not. And there is always pause for concern. We have a lot of talk coming out of Russia also allying themselves with China and some other what the United States would consider state enemies or people to closely keep their eye on, and the CCP is one of them. But as far as a task force, and this also comes to mind is I know that Congress has oversight over the Pentagon in terms of funding, but how it dictates the missions and stuff, I'm not exactly sure how that works. But it seems kind of odd that it's Congress who is recommending this and not from Pentagon. But we also know that the Secretary of Defense and the military is, while strong, it is kind of in a weird flux right now, and it is not as robust as we used to have. At least when my dad was in the military, and I'm sure a lot of the people were before. There's a lot of great people serving in the military right now that would I would support them. But what is the difference between a task force Marianas and a joint task force that focuses on on China? And I would say that it's because it would include Japan and like Congress said, Australia. I haven't heard anything from our delegate Moylan on this matter. Have you heard any press releases or anything on a task force that focuses on China?
Nothing except the task force for Micronesia.
Right. And I'm not sure if that's purposeful or if it's just not getting big movement in Washington. But Washington Times had a really good article on it. And if it's part of a law that they passed during an act for funding back in for fiscal year 2023 that hasn't been implemented, then, you know, I think it's going to get greater news, especially with everything that's going on. And I don't know what Trump will do if when he's elected.
Well, I think this has already been implemented.
Think so?
To a great extent, in the planning for with the assignment of the 2-star, and also the appropriation of money last year for hardening bases throughout Micronesia.
Well, that's what the Pentagon is
dispersing.
saying. Yeah,
it's already in place. What's not visible is the China-facing component, and yes, it would.
Or alliances with Japan and Australia, which are
the alliance with Japan was just upgraded a week ago.
Oh, okay.
And with Australia, we've been having talks ever since back during the Obama days, and then every year they have the exercises, which are here in this area. So it's not that the Pentagon's not doing anything. It's just that there isn't a dedicated devotion of American military assets under a task force that is separate and apart from all other military activities in this area, aiming at China.
At least one that's quantifiable that the Congress can, you know, cite and source, because they're the ones that give the money for these task forces or create them through the budget hearings. But that's interesting. I'm going to look more. I searched for more news on this specific subject matter on a task force for China. I didn't find too much yet, but it might just be because I have a really horrible browser who I get the same results every time I look for certain things. So I really have to be very creative in the words that I use. But yeah, you know, thanks for some of that understanding, because I know you have a close eye on what's happening in Taiwan and China. You have some interest in that, and
I've been watching it for years. And
yeah,
years.
absolutely. We're going to move on to Maine versus the Republic. Now, you know that the election year is coming up. I mean, the election year. It is the election year. The presidential race is happening right now. There's going to be a legislative election here on Guam. But back to the national election scene, when we vote for a president, if you're in the States and you vote for president and your ballot is cast and the states tally it, there are a number of people, the special electors called the College of Electors, and each state has different rules and regulations on how those representatives go ultimately to D.C. to cast their vote based on what happened, or representative of the state. And some people are not in agreement with that process. They think the popular vote should be the ultimate vote, but our electoral college has been instituted. It's not since the beginning of the Constitution, but
it is in the Constitution.
Oh, it is the Constitution. Was it from the very beginning?
From the very
beginning. Okay,
beginning.
then it's from the very beginning. I'm getting wrong information. It's probably from a lefty site. Because, I don't know. It didn't come from there.
Have you been reading them again?
Oh, I know. They trick me all the time. But, this one is about Maine, and Maine is the latest state to reconfigure the way that their state counts votes, the popular vote, and gives it to their electors of the Electoral College. But this is another manipulation so that they utilize the national popular vote rather than their state's decision. It's very tricky language. And this article that came out in Epoch Times, it actually came out in other websites, other publications as well, but this one I think was a little more comprehensive. Maine governor allows national popular vote legislation to become law. Maine Governor Janet Mills said she will allow a narrowly passed bill that would award the state's 4 electoral college votes to go toward the winner of the national popular vote to become law, as opposed to the current system where the votes go either to the winner of the state's popular vote or according to the results in each of congressional districts, as in the case in Maine. A group known as the National Popular Vote, the NPV, is behind a push for states to enter into a National Popular Vote interstate compact that would hand the presidency to whoever gets the greatest number of popular votes at the national level. And this is according to the long-held debate, or at least since 2016, of is our country a democracy or a republic, a representative republic? It's kind of both. It's a democratic republic. However, when we do vote for president, it's not the national popular vote. And you might think, well, what do you mean? We're a democracy. It should be the winner takes it all. But if we're having a representative government, it doesn't work that easily. And it shouldn't work that way because, well, the article will say a little bit more about it. Rather than abolishing the Electoral College, this would require the national popular vote, would require presidential electors in the states and the District of Columbia to vote for the candidate who gets the most popular votes overall, which would see the outcome of the election decided by the views of those living in major population centers like Los Angeles and Houston instead of by entire swing states. I'm going to continue this article when we come back. The 7th inning stretch is next. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG The Point. My name is Jose Martinez. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Choice Broadcasting and Lotte Hotel Guam present the 2024 Island Wedding Expo. Mark the date, Sunday, May 19th. Join us as we showcase an abundance of elegant choices for that special day. Vendor booths are now available, but hurry, they're filling up. If you're a business that specializes in all things weddings, from coordinators to florists to cakes, photographers, and more, call 888-7346 and ask for Doris, Daryl, or Shanzi. For more information about the 2024 Island Wedding Expo, call 888-RDIO.
The 7th inning stretch, 2 more innings left in this Wednesday edition of Tall Tales. When we were at the beginning of the innings, we were talking, going over an article that was in Epic Times about Maine passing a law, the National Popular Vote Act, to have their electoral college candidates or college representatives to vote accordingly to where the national popular vote went. I'm just going to repeat this paragraph where we left off. Rather than abolishing the Electoral College, the National Popular Vote Act would require presidential electors in the states and the District of Columbia to vote for the candidate who gets the most popular votes overall, which would see the outcome of the election decided by the views of those living in major population centers like Los Angeles and Houston instead of by entire swing states. Maine's legislation passed the State House of Representatives on April 2nd by a slim 73-72 margin. And it cleared the Senate the following day by an 18-12 vote. In an April 15th press release, Ms. Mills, the governor, said she had been carefully considering the bill's merits for the past 10 days and reviewing arguments both for and against. She opted to give her approval to the bill without a signature. Maine's Constitution gives governors 3 options to legislations that arrive at their desk: sign a bill into law, veto it, or allow it to become law without their signature. Sounds very, very familiar. Excuse me, because it is. She opted to, supporters of the legislature argue that electing a president based on who has more support among voters in a state, but not nationwide, doesn't make sense, and that the new system under the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact would make everyone's vote count the same no matter where they live. Critics of the compact argue that legislation is a shortcut to bypass the U.S. Constitution because such a change in the way the president is elected should involve a constitutional amendment. Hence, Maine versus the Republic. And thank you for qualifying or clarifying to me the constitutionality of the Electoral College, Daryl. A constitutional amendment must be passed by a 2/3 majority in the U.S. Congress and ratified by 3/4 of the states. They also warn it would ultimately stifle the voices of voters in smaller rural states like Maine. And I'm going to pause here in this because I have on the line no stranger to election processes and the campaign season, Dr. Ronald McNitch, who wants to speak on electoral colleges. Good afternoon, Dr. McNitch. What say you?
Hey, Hafide Jose, Hafide Guam. Yeah, the Electoral College, a lot of people are unfamiliar. There is a misconception that we vote for president. Actually, states vote for electors who then go to the Capitol and cast their votes according to the number of electoral votes that exist. So we don't really vote for the president directly. And so basically this is just a way of skirting what should be a process designed to protect small population states. That was part of the Great Compromise. The Great Compromise was, how do we overcome large states dominating small states in our federal government? And the compromise involved granting all states an equal number of senators in the U.S. Senate, and then apportioning the House of Representatives according to population. Most people don't know this. We've had 27 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, and of course everyone's familiar with the Bill of Rights. Well, actually, there were 12 ideas considered in the Bill of Rights that really almost flew. One of them ended up being the 27th Amendment. It was passed nearly 202 years after it was first proposed. It was dug up by a 19-year-old college student in Texas who got other states to sign off, and that prevents Congress from giving itself pay raises before they go through elections. And he made a C on his paper, made him mad, and so then he made a national movement out of it. One of the ideas that didn't go through was apportionment to the House of Representatives. Under the idea by Madison is that there would be a sliding scale. So I think it was for like every 10,000 people, you would get one member of the House of Representatives at the time. And then as the population increased, the number would be adjusted. And that idea was the one that didn't really fly. And really, the question has always been, how can we keep states being able to have a voice when they have lower populations compared to dominant states? And I got to tell you, California has 10% of the population.
Wow.
I mean, that's a lot of people. And if you look at the United States, you can really make an 80-20 split in the United States for population, really from the plains onto the West Coast. Only 20% of the people in the United States live there. Only about 10% live in that core bulk area that exists in the United States on the plains. and then most of the population is concentrated in the east. But this particular plan, Maine's making a big mistake. They're throwing away all of their national political power by doing this.
It's ironic, right? Maine benefits from an electoral college process.
Right. It was designed for states like Maine that have lower populations. And by the way, Maine has very intense politics. They feel very strongly about their politics, particularly northeastern states. And by the way, most
that whole area there, New Hampshire, Vermont,
right?
It's crazy.
And originally, Maine was part of the state of Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it was the north. It was the not Beverly Hillbillies. It was the hillbilly country of the state of Massachusetts who finally got fed up with Massachusetts politics, and they ended up splitting, I think, in the 1820s.
Oh, no kidding.
But same thing with Vermont. Vermont got fed up with New York politics, and Alexander Hamilton brokered the split for Vermont to become the 14th state.
Well,
Vermont's a great example.
They should get back together then, because it's the same politics in New York and Vermont. I used to live in Connecticut.
Right. And, I think we have 7 states that only have 1 congressional district, 2 senators, so they have 3 electoral votes. So 7 of the 50 states have 3 electoral votes in the electoral college. And that only power they have isn't in their numbers for a popular vote. It's in their numbers tiled up as they contribute to the electoral college. And that's where they get their power from. And it's simply reckless for them to throw it away. It is really baffling. And by the way, I think it's New Hampshire. New Hampshire is one of my favorite states.
I love the motto.
Right? What's that? I'm sorry.
I love their motto.
What is it?
Live free or die.
Oh, okay.
It's their state motto.
Well, New Hampshire, all these 13 original states all had oceanfront property. They had a connection to the sea. Vermont was the first one not. But if you look at New Hampshire, I think they only pay their senators in their legislature $100 a year each. That's it.
Nice.
No frills, no per diem, nothing. They get $100 for the year.
Wow. That probably reduces the amount of bloated laws and legislation that happens there. Something we can probably take a hint here on Guam.
Right. I think Montana, they only meet, or a couple of states, they only meet every other year. They only meet every year in some states.
I'm trying to understand this movement, and for me, I've been voting since the 90s and since the Clinton era. But I don't recall ever having this controversy between electoral votes and versus the popular vote until I guess Hillary lost to Trump in the electoral college.
Actually, it dates back further. If you look at the Bush-Gore controversy, where everyone realized that Florida, a single state, because of the winner-take-all policies, could pretty much throw all of their weight behind a single candidate and flip an election. And the interesting thing about the Florida case is some states have said that, and they use a system where if you win a district, the electoral vote goes to the candidate who wins the district, and then the popular vote at the state level goes to the candidate. So they get two. The 2 senatorial votes go to the winner of the popular vote. Several states have adopted that method, which is actually fairly reasonable, and it still retains the ability of the state to have integrity in terms of retaining its power and not throwing away their power to the large states, which is what Maine has actually done. They've literally given all of their electoral power, they've surrendered it to California, New York, Texas, and Florida, basically.
Yeah. And politically, the governor of Maine just said, I kind of support it, but I don't want to show my support by citing it, so I'm just going to pass. That's essentially what she did. Good for her. But not realize, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the mentality of the pro-popular vote compact the logic of it is, to me, is skewed. It really is one that damages, anybody who supports it, unless of course you come from a New England town or a city or the West Coast cities. It just it goes against, I think, everything our founding fathers stood for.
Right. It was not intended to be the way that Maine has just selected it to be.
Right.
It was very reckless for them to throw away this very important right. This is a form of a civil right that Maine has retained to decide who gets to become president. It's part of their voice. And they basically said, we believe our voice doesn't matter. And they've thrown it away, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, it is.
And actually Maine has always been an interesting state. Lincoln's vice president was from Maine, and he preferred to be in the Coast Guard in his state during the Civil War than hang out in Washington, D.C. And so they've always had some very interesting politicians from Maine. Discount them for that. It's just that they're very different. They're not your normal politically minded folks. Maybe it's because they're so close to Canada. I don't know.
Could be the squishy type folks, but they are nice folks. I've had a chance to spend weekends in the fall there, and that's when the leaves turn colors, and it's just an incredible sight. Politics aside, Maine is very beautiful when the leaves start changing and right before they fall off the trees and winter and snow come down. And I guess that's their saving grace. It's a beautiful state.
It's truly a beautiful place. It's a beautiful country there. And also the people are very nice and genuine.
That's true.
But it's just unfortunate that they have allowed themselves to be browbeat nationally on this wacky.
Well, it's by narrow margins, so I hope that some people come to their senses soon. It won't be during this election cycle, but hopefully very soon. Doc, I thank you for calling in. Your expertise is much appreciated, and I hope to hear from you soon. Have a great afternoon.
Hey, it's always fun. We'll talk some more, man. Doing a great job, Jose.
Thank you very much. All right. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG. We're going to go to Churchill Downs. I'm going to finish up this article, wrap it up, give some more context to what's going on. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Okay, what's instant issue?
You open an account, you receive your new debit card right then as an instant issue.
And if I have to replace my card for whatever reason?
Yep, you order, it's ready. No waiting for the mail. And you can track your usage on your online banking in real time.
Wait, I can see my purchase or ATM activity when they happen?
Yep, instantly.
I like it. Where do I sign up?
Bank Pacific. You know, where those put branches, we place routes instantly.
Member FDIC.
Located in the heart of Hagåtña, Mezcla Fusion Bistro isn't just a meal, it's an experience. Fresh, local ingredients are fused with international influence. Here at Mezcla Fusion Bistro, Chamorro staples meet modern fusion. Make your reservation today and taste the magic. Visit us online at mezclaguam.com or call 479-2652 or 489-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Churchill Downs, the home stretch, about the last segment before we conclude this Wednesday edition of Tall Tales. I'm going to complete this article that talks about the recent passage of a National Popular Vote Act by the Maine legislation, where the governor is just allowing it to lapse into law. According to Governor Mills, while she recognizes concerns about presidential candidates spending less time in smaller swing states like Maine, she thinks it's possible candidates will spend more time in every state when every vote counts equally. It's wishful thinking. Despite the vast population differences between regions that would determine areas of concentrated voting power. I struggle to reconcile the fact that a candidate who has fewer actual votes than their opponent can still become president of the United States, she said. Tell us that you have no understanding of why the Electoral College by telling us you have no understanding of why the Electoral College. Back to the article. Absent a ranked choice voting circumstance, it seems to me that the person who wins the most votes should become the president. To do otherwise seemingly runs counter to the democratic foundations of our country, Ms. Mills added. I want her to do the U.S. Congress next, and how she understands that how come Maine doesn't have as many representatives that California does. Anyways, currently under the Electoral College system, delegates are assigned to states based on how residents are represented in Congress. States with bigger populations get more representatives in the House, but each state, no matter its population, also gets 2 senators to represent its interests. Electoral College delegates for most states, except Maine, have voted under a statewide winner-take-all system where they put their vote behind the presidential candidate who wins the popular votes in their state. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact would change this to a winner-takes-all system based on the national popular vote, which needs the support of 270 delegates for participating states to determine who to send straight to the White House. Currently, the PAC's members collectively control 205 electoral votes, 65 votes short of what it needs to be effective. Ms. Mills said the bill passed the legislature in Maine and is not irreversible. Still recognizing that there is merit to both sides of the argument and recognizing that this measure has been the subject of public discussion several times before in Maine, I would like this important nationwide debate to continue, and so I will allow this bill to become law without my signature, she said. Maine has now joined 15 other states and the District of Columbia to adopt the compact. California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington have all passed similar legislation. And I will give it up to you, tall tale tailgaters, to find out what every one of them have in common. You know, that this to me feels like these states that have the higher populations have hoodwinked the smaller areas or smaller electoral college representative states so that they can get their vote as well. And, Maine is not California. And I'll just read from this list of those in the compact. California is not Colorado, is not Connecticut, is not Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts. They all have something in common. But they also have very vast differences. And doing a popular vote for the presidency is kind of like saying we don't want to have a balanced type of legislation either. Our representation. And that's why I think this needs a little bit more. I'm kind of laughing at the governor's rationalization for why this is an important debate. I understand that people don't want to hear that, even though they have an opinion. It's based off of extremely faulty information or logic, but this is not an evenly based type of argument. It's kind of self-defeating if you're a smaller area that has very few electoral college votes to want to give away your state just for a populist type argument. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG The Point. I'm going to the next thing on the card here, and this is Fisher versus Ike, or who Judge Klitzkie referred to as Fisher versus a fissure, or staying in his lane. This came out in the Guam Daily Post, talking about a lawsuit that is that has been filed by Senator Tom Fisher against the DOE, or Ike Santos of the DOE. Judge denies dismissal of case against education official regarding overtime pay. Superior Court of Guam Judge Arthur Barcenas has denied a motion to dismiss the complaint filed by a local senator against a Guam Department of Education official over the alleged illegal expenditure of funds for overtime pay. Senator Tom Fisher filed suit against DOE Federal Programs Administrator Ignacio Santos and 5 other unnamed individuals in July of 2023. The complaint stemmed from audit findings released by the Office of Public Accountability in April of that year regarding overtime payments made primarily to ineligible Federal Program Division employees. According to Post files, the audit covered payments certified between March 2020 and September 2022, in which Santos signed off on payments to exempt employees as well as himself. Fisher sought the return of any money expended improperly, at least $640,000, and possibly more to be proven at trial, according to the complaint. In filing the suit, the senator cited the local law that allows taxpayers to sue the government and executive branch officials in order to prevent the improper expenditure of money and for the return of improperly expended money. Santos moved to dismiss Fisher's complaint, arguing that he did not have the authority or ability to expend monies owned by the government of Guam. Only the superintendent has the ability to expend funds. Even plaintiff's attachment to the complaint, the OPA report, specifically cites the SOP that declares the superintendent is responsible for the final approval of release of payroll funds, the dismissal motion stated. The motion also argued that Santos's actions did not constitute a release or spending of funds and ultimately concluded that Fisher's complaint should be dismissed without prejudice for failing to state a claim for which relief could be granted. However, Barcenas determined that Fisher sufficiently substantiated a claim under Guam law and denied the motion to dismiss. At the same time that Santos moved to dismiss the case, he also moved for an order granting summary judgment in his favor. Santos's motion stated that he certified proposed overtime compensation plans as an allowable use of federal funds because the Federal Education Department had already determined that federal funds may be used to reimburse compensation paid under those plans. This was Mr. Santos's only role in signing off on the proposed compensation plans, the motion stated. John Fernandez, the GDOE superintendent, during the time frame examined by the OPA audit, approved the overtime plans on numerous occasions, according to Santos's motion. The motion also stated the OPA report on overtime payments failed to consider relevant and dispositive law. Barcenas chose to defer consideration of the summary judgment motion until discovery on the case is completed. Fisher celebrated the judge's decision, stating in a press release that the time is now to uphold accountability and safeguard the integrity of our institutions. With each denial of dismissal, we draw nearer to uncovering the truth and ensuring justice prevails. Today's ruling reaffirms our unwavering commitment to protecting public funds and service our students as intended, Fisher stated in his release. This is going to be an interesting thing to follow, and it was characterized as Fisher stepping into a fissure himself, staying in his lanes. We're going to have more on that tomorrow, and more of some things I didn't get to, as well as my red meat against the Biden energy policy. This one on the card was called Green Energy versus Reality. And again, it is related to our island because solar seems to be the renewable energy du jour, and for the policy that GPA is going to follow so that we are 100% compliant with renewable energy. I think in 2035 or something like that. It's actually not far away, people. but the technology seems even farther. Right now, we have the technology to send our message to our president. So let's all together greet him by saying, "Let's go, Brandon."
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Killers on scooters in New York City. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. 2 masked gunmen on scooters shot and killed a man last night in the Bronx and injured 3 others.
Several NYPD officers and detectives on scene of a quadruple shooting turned deadly Tuesday evening. Shell casings lie scattered in the Bronx. The victims, all men who police say were standing on the corner at the time. The shooting underscores why police are going after illegal scooters, sharing their direct relation with violent crime. Since January, 9,500 have been taken off the streets. 13 arrests have been made.
Kendall Green with Fox 5 New York. The man killed was 29 years old. Police took 1 person into custody and are investigating the shooting as gang-related. Crime in New York City was on top of former President Trump's mind as he campaigned in Harlem yesterday. After day 2 of his hush money trial wrapped up, he slammed Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, who is prosecuting the case.
Alvin Bragg does nothing. He goes after guys like Trump who did nothing wrong. Violent criminals, murderers, they know there are hundreds of murderers all over the city. They know who they are. They don't pick them up. They go after Trump.
Jury selection in the hush money trial resumes Thursday. Police in California arrested 26 pro-Palestinian protesters Monday after they disrupted traffic on the Golden Gate Bridge. The question now, will prosecutors charge them?
The San Francisco District Attorney says they are investigating each person right now to determine who will be charged with a felony or a misdemeanor. And the anti-Israel protesters who were arrested in coordinated protests across the U.S. may be getting some assistance from so-called Democratic Party dark money.
Fox's Matt Fenn. Arrest also made during demonstrations in other cities Monday, including New York and Chicago. Dow futures up 59 points at this hour after the Dow snapped a 6-day losing streak yesterday. America's listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, the Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, going far beyond the headlines, tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Maria Bartiromo.
I'm Brian Kilmeade, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News.
President Biden's back on the campaign trail.
The president kicked off a Pennsylvania tour in his hometown of Scranton.
I learned a lot here in Scranton. I learned that money doesn't determine your worth.
President Biden using the visit to contrast his tax plan, raising rates for top earners, with his Republican opponents, former President Trump.
You learn that telling people you're fired was something to laugh about. I guess that's how you look at the world when you're in Park Avenue, Mar-a-Lago.
The president speaks with United Steelworkers in Pittsburgh today ahead of a stop tomorrow in Philadelphia. Pennsylvania is expected to be one of a handful of states to decide the presidency in November. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Speaker Mike Johnson says he won't step down as Republican anger grows over his plan to pass long-stalled funding for Ukraine, Israel, and other allies. YouTube gets a bit more serious about viewers blocking advertising.
Google, which owns YouTube, started a new policy some months ago where it would pop up a display at you if you tried using ad-blocking apps when viewing videos on YouTube, reminding you it violated their rules. But now the presence of an ad-blocking app stops the YouTube service for you immediately. Google says ad blockers may allow you to skip the commercials you find pesky, but that advertising placement is how revenue is generated for the creators who do the work in presenting you the videos by which you distract yourself. Eben Brown, Fox News.
Congress adds 25 titles to its national recording registry, including ABBA's Dancing Queen, the songs by Blondie, The Chicks, and even Gene Autry's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The songs are picked for their historical or cultural significance. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
KFC's Extra Tasty Spicy is here to set every moment on fire. Spice up your day with a dash of extreme spicy. Available in battered fries, boneless crispy strips, and KFC crispy chicken. Order the Extra Tasty Spicy and get ready for a fiery feast. Enter KFC's spiciest era yet. Get your fix at your favorite KFC today or order online at kfcguam.com. KFC, it's finger licking good.
They are our love bugs and companions. They are our pets, our family, and they make life better. When we face unexpected challenges, so do our pets. That's why we're on a mission to support people and their pets. Whether donating a bag of kibble, sharing an Instagram post of a lost cat, or welcoming a foster pet into your home, every bit of kindness counts. Visit petsandpeopletogether.org to learn how to be a helper in your community. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Iran in this moment?
Don't. Mr. President, don't. Stop it. Support Israel. With respect, go to Amazon and buy a spine online.
Overturning Roe was just the opening act, of a larger strategy to take women's rights and freedoms.
The clock is ticking. Only 202 more days until Election Day.
Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
From coast to coast. From border to border. From sea to shining sea. Sean Hannity is on.
Stay right here for our final news roundup and information overload.
All right, news roundup and information overload. Our toll-free ARD number is 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. I can't take the lying that is never-ending, nonstop. You know, it's just a flurry of lies. We've gone over the history of the Biden administration and their appeasement of Iran. We went back to the Obama-Biden administration. Remember, you know, estimates on the amount of money that became available with the Iranian deal of Obama and Biden with that was $150 billion. We talked at length about the $400 million, you know, in a cargo plane in cash and other currency dumped on their tarmac and how insane this is. We talked a lot about how important it was that Donald Trump stepped up as president, and Donald Trump